I call to order the meeting of the Minnehaha Creek Watershed District Board of Managers, August 28, 2025. All managers are present, Manager Miller attending remotely.
You have to shut that door.
Is there anyone who wishes to speak to the board? Any member of the public? Mr. and Mrs. Loomis, did you want to speak to us this evening? Okay. Excellent. On the agenda, I'm going to move number 12 to the end. Otherwise, with that change, can I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Voting by roll call on the agenda. Manager Miller? Manager Sando?
Here.
Manager Loftus?
Aye.
Manager Olson?
Aye.
Manager Hejmati?
Aye.
Manager Maxwell?
Aye.
And Manager White, aye.
Miller votes aye.
Thank you. Thank you. On the consent agenda, we have approval of the minutes of the last meeting, August 14th, approval of the 3 check registers, the general checking register, surety checking register, and wire transfer register, and 1 resolution, 25044, for 225 soil and water assessment tool workshop attendance by staff members. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Manager Maxwell
Second.
moves, and second by Manager Hejmati. Voting on the consent agenda, Manager Hejmati,
Aye.
Manager Maxwell,
Aye.
Manager White votes aye, Manager Olson.
Aye.
Manager Loftus.
Aye.
Manager Sando.
Aye.
Manager Miller.
Aye.
Thank you. I don't have a report this evening, so Manager Olson, can you give the report from Policy and Planning Committee? I'm sorry, you called it to order, but I didn't, I didn't let you know.
Okay. The meeting went very well. We had a detailed presentation on an opportunity for a possible land acquisition that would help work on some of the feeder creeks to Lake Minnetonka. And so we're going to be looking at that over time. Recently became available. And we also looked at a review of the current status of the permitting for Highway 5's project going past the Arboretum area. Is going to be a Highway 5 improvement, and it looks like one of the reasons for a variance may have been mitigated by a solution that can avoid a variance. So we're happy to see that as well.
Thank you very much. Managers Olson and Sando represented us on the Minnesota Watershed Business Meeting last week, earlier this week. Would you like to report on that?
You want to do that?
It was a very good meeting, and it was an annual meeting for solutions and petitions. There was 3 petitions and 3 resolutions. You want to
Sure.
build from that, Bill?
Yeah, we had the opportunity to vote on our legislative agenda, and although the mass amount of the attendees and the delegates voted to approve all 3, there was one particular motion, the third one, where your representative sitting here talking voted no. I was one of 2 out of 48 delegates. And the fundamental reason I voted no was that I don't think it's the legislature's responsibility to take out a stick and beat the DNR and the NPCA on timeliness of approvals for permits. And that's essentially what it was. It was the watersheds getting together saying you need to communicate back with us in a timely way that the permit is valid and not missing anything. We've been very effective in the last year discussing that need with both organizations, and changes have been made to allow that to happen. So, in my opinion, that's the better way of doing it rather than legislating it. However, there's a group of folks from outstate that felt very strongly about that, so it did get passed, and they will have it on the agenda. The legislature may or may not do anything about it, but that's where we stood. So all three agenda items were approved.
Thank you. Thank you, both of you, for attending. The upcoming meeting schedule are usually previously scheduled committee and board meetings are here. And Manager Hijmati will be the board liaison for the Citizens Advisory Committee meeting on September 17. Next on our business here is the public hearing on the 2026 budget and levy.
Jamadi, maybe you want to ask President White, I'm not sure what
Yeah.
you're asking me.
I noticed that the Citizens Advisory Committee is at
Oh, the
7,
Citizens
yeah,
Advisory.
it's 7 o'clock. It used to be at 6:30. Is that 7 o'clock?
I don't know.
I think it should be 6:30, Manager.
That's a typo.
It's a typo.
Yeah, that's what I wondered about.
Okay,
But you were pointing to September 11th, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was looking at,
Yeah,
yeah.
understood.
okay, CAC at 6:30. Thank you for
6:30.
asking.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Whisker is going to be presenting the budget and levy public hearing.
All right, good evening, Board of Managers. And I'm very pleased to be before you this evening to provide an overview of the 2026 budget and the Watershed District's proposed 2026 tax levy to support tonight's public hearing. I'm going to start by not burying the lead. The Watershed District's 2026 budget proposes a 0.6% increase, but no increase to the tax levy, which I think can be credited to the board's careful planning. Over the last 6 or 7 years, we've only seen a 2% increase in one of those last 7 years, all while I think continuing to deliver impactful projects on the landscape in partnership with our communities. So briefly, before I jump into things, I wanted to recap the steps that we took leading to this evening. After introducing the budget at the May 8th committee meeting, we spent some time in June reviewing our capital improvement plan. We reviewed the program and personnel budget, all before we went through some refinements and then engaged our Citizens Advisory Committee. And that all brought us to tonight's duly noticed public hearing, which, as you all know, will be followed with action on September 11th, which is required to meet our statutory deadline of September 15th to adopt the budget and certify the levy. And that all happens then before we take any final comment closer towards the end of the year at our Truth in Taxation comment. Before jumping straight into the numbers, as one of the most significant policy decisions the board makes annually, I wanted to frame the 2026 budget against our vision and what we hope to achieve and deliver for the tax-paying members of the public and our partner communities. As the board knows, all of the Watershed District's work is guided by its vision of a balanced urban ecology, which really strives to find a balance between the natural and built environments. Knowing that nature is the bedrock of cities, underpins local identity, it creates place, and that when the Watershed District's project and policy work is integrated with that built environment and with land use, we not only improve the environment, but we also bring value and we create thriving and livable communities. So in thinking about our capital project work, we know that focus brings success because it allows us to sustain attention in areas of high need. Focus also helps us understand local priorities, building the situational awareness that we need to cultivate meaningful relationships and integrate our work with that of our partners. To build that focus, we currently have 4 major areas of capital project planning and implementation. Those are shown here on the map. We have our 44 square mile lower watershed, or the Minnehaha Creek subwatershed. And then upstream, around Lake Minnetonka, we have our Lake Minnetonka strategy, where we're focused on the 3 largest, most polluting tributaries into the lake, all of which drain, coincidentally, to bays that are impaired for water quality, shown here in red. To support work outside of those focal areas, we've created the Land and Water Partnership program. This was designed for our member communities, and it was designed by our member communities. And this is a program of early coordination with land use partners where we provide technical and planning support and hopefully build on-ramps for their work, their projects to enter into our capital improvement program. This work responds to public infrastructure projects and through permitting as well. We work to create outcomes that we hope exceed regulatory minimums, like our work with the Burl Oaks Golf Club earlier this year, which resulted in the creation of almost 4 acres of historically filled wetlands and added over 3,200 cubic yards of flood storage in the Painter Creek tributary to Lake Minnetonka. The Land and Water Partnership projects that are inside our 2026 capital improvement program right now include Northside Park, which is actually a 2025 project. Final payment's going to be made this year with funds that were held in escrow from our partnership with Lifetime and the City of St. Louis Park. And then in our 2026 projects, we have the Morningside Ravine in Medina in the Painter Creek subwatershed, Calvary Church, and downtown Long Lake, both of which include grant dollars, which the watershed's stewarding to move work through design, feasibility, and construction. Turning downstream to our namesake, the Minnehaha Creek subwatershed, we're going to be building off a strong foundation of public and private partnerships, like work that delivered Methodist Hospital, this 15-acre wetland and stream restoration that created new public access to the creek, oriented this place of healing, which we know improves patient outcomes around nature, and then permanently removed the hospital from the floodplain, or the daylighting of Minnehaha Creek just upstream, which ultimately connected 550 affordable housing units to a new 30-acre nature preserve and treated over 80 acres of previously untreated runoff from Excelsior Boulevard. And Cottageville Park, which expanded parklands by 600% in the area, delivering over 3 new acres of green space, reducing police calls, catalyzing new affordable housing, while importantly for us, daylighting the creek and treating over 20 acres of regional stormwater while delivering, as I mentioned, new affordable housing there shown to the north. Carrying that work forward in 2026, the Watershed District is going to be working to advance projects in both the Minnehaha Creek Greenway and downstream in the Minneapolis Parkway. Those projects include advancing construction of the Gateway parcel at Cottageville Park and 325 Blake Road, as well as linking our upstream and downstream work through the Cedar Trail connection, which will connect all of our work to that trail, which sees over 1 million visitors and bike riders each year. And it will also bring hundreds of residents each year within the 15-minute walk shed of the preserve. If you think about the rail line as a barrier and the population density that lies to the north around Cottageville Park. Downstream, we'll also be moving our partnership work forward with the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board and the City of Minneapolis by planning the Meadowbrook Golf Course improvement, which has the potential to create flood storage and connect the Greenway into Edina. Simultaneously, we'll be moving work forward in the chain of lakes and the creek with Twin Lake Pond dredging, planning and design for parkway projects at Cedar Avenue, and investment at Cedar Meadows and Amelia Pond at Nokomis, with the parks for which draw around 500,000 to 1 million visitors each year, respectively. That downstream work in the creek area has been complemented, of course, with our upstream efforts in the 6 Mile Creek subwatershed, all 27 square miles of which drain to Halstead Bay, which is impaired for nutrients. In this area, we've partnered with the university, with the legislature to understand common carp populations and restore almost 3,000 acres of shallow lake habitat and water quality. We've used Clean Water Legacy dollars to address internal loading. And we delivered the City of Victoria's first ecological park on Wasserman Lake, which has begun now to meet water quality standards for the first time in monitored history. As the city manager noted here, partnership with the district strengthened the city's ability to integrate green space, water resources, and sustainable infrastructure into the planned growth of the community. Thank you, Deb. In 2026, building off that work, we're going to be looking at constructing the East Auburn project, which will continue progress for Auburn Lake inside the heavily used 3,000-acre Carver Park Reserve. That Auburn Wetland Restoration Project will address half of the loading coming from the system, around 45 pounds. And if Wasserman, just upstream, continues to meet standards for state water quality, the Auburn project then is estimated to address another 10 to 15% of the required pollution load for Auburn to make progress towards clean water standards. The district's also going to be moving into design for its turbid wetland restoration project. We're estimating there that might fully address, 100% address the watershed load to Turbid Lake, allowing any follow-up alum doses to that lake to actually delist or remove Turbid Lake from the state's impaired waters list. So if that happens, that would then reduce loading downstream to Lunston, which would be our next target, by a quarter, by 25%, driving significant forward progress as we make this progressive march from upstream to downstream. And we've talked about this in committee in the past, but planning and feasibility, we hope, will be underway for a Pearson's Headwaters restoration and Halstead alum project further downstream. Jumping across the lake now to the north, we have the 12 square miles of the Long Lake subwatershed, which drain to impaired Tanager Bay. In this geography, as you know, we've cultivated a partnership with the City of Medina, Long Lake, Orono, and the Long Lake Waters Association to deliver this roadmap, which is really an implementation plan using monitoring data that identifies what the problems are, what's causing the problems, and then outlines what are the implementation strategies that will make a measurable difference. In this area in 26, the watershed will be implementing its County Road 6 project retrofit, pond retrofit. This is estimated to achieve 15% of the required reductions necessary to clean up Long Lake based on the PCA's TMDL. And we'll be using grant dollars, hopefully in partnership with the City of Long Lake, to study their downtown, which has this small stream and pond system that runs right through the middle of downtown into the west side of the lake, to identify further opportunities to reduce loading in the areas of highest need, this heavily urbanized area of the city. Our goals are to find a combination of projects that will address another 30% of the reductions that are needed. So those two projects combined could get us almost halfway towards meeting state standards for Long Lake. And the mayor of this project noted that the partnership goes far beyond the City of Long Lake and looks at the entire system to find cost-effective opportunities that make lasting community benefit. And then finally, our next major geography on deck, we talked about this in committee. Eva and Kaylee did a great job outlining the issues and potential drivers out here, is Painter Creek, which is going to be continuing work in diagnostic and community-based planning. And we're hoping that we'll be able to convene our partners in the next year and a half, so that any projects that we identify collaboratively can be integrated into a roadmap similar to what we've done for Long Lake, and then that will sit inside our 2027 watershed plan. So that's a look at the project side of the ledger, shifting now strategically to look at the policy work that we deliver for our board and attending public and folks at home. Our primary emphasis in policy has really been climate action and taking a data-driven approach to addressing the disruptions that we've already experienced in our rainfall patterns. As you all know, as a region, we've had the wettest 7 years ever recorded, and every other version of record in that 7 years, including a flood of record, followed by years of significant drought, and then another wet year this year. So our watershed and the communities that are part of the watershed have already been experiencing the impacts of climate and those boom and bust cycles that are associated with water, which have impacted institutions and public lands. They've taxed our infrastructure, and they've impacted our natural systems. For us, it's highlighted old land use decisions through the historic development patterns that are still impacting us today, things that we're trying to unwind, like the filling of over 80% of our area's wetlands down in Minneapolis, which acted as filters and sponges for nature and have been removed from the landscape. And at the center of all those flood-related impacts are, of course, people that are impacted at home where they live. And it's all of that context that sits at the core of our climate action framework, which rests on three key pillars. First, understanding the water patterns in the district today, but importantly, how are those patterns going to change in the future? And then using that understanding of flooding, where it will occur, who's impacted, to gather our communities to develop a shared strategy to shape future policy and to build future projects that will increase resilience to flooding across the watershed. Our climate action so far is largely orbited around two prongs. First, deploying real-time water level monitoring to support emergency managers with the short-term information they need for water level warnings. And that's something that we held a summit on this year with our member communities and emergency managers and friends at Hennepin County, and are in the process of finalizing our flood response plan. Looking forward into 2026 and 2027, the next prong of work is really going to be working side by side with member communities to assess longer term vulnerabilities to flooding. How much flooding might there be? Where might it occur? Who will be impacted? And what policies and projects can we implement to reduce flood risk? And it's those initiatives that are at the heart of our 2026 budget for policy planning as we prepare to get our policy advisory committee, our technical advisory committee together to help us co-create that vision for the future in our 2027 watershed plan. So that's the story, and these are the numbers. As I mentioned earlier, there's a zero proposed increase to the district's tax levy. Pending the public hearing, the levy will remain flat in 2025 at $9,869,513. This will be the 6 out of 7 years that we've been able to deliver the results I just showed you without raising taxes. Complementing the tax levies, almost $400,000 in outside grant funds for next year. These are funds that are secured, not speculated on. This is lower, you'll see, than last year, but it's still something worth highlighting because since 2020, the Watershed District secured $6.7 million, almost $7 million in outside funds, and that represents around 7% of expenditures over that same time period. As I've outlined in the presentation so far, those revenue sources, support the capital project budget, which is proposed to increase in 2026 just shy of 1%, or around $46,000. The capital budget, as I showed you, includes the land and water partnership projects like Holbrook or downtown Long Lake, Calvary Church, County Road 6, our Auburn wetland restoration, and the Greenway and Parkway projects, with others entering planning and feasibility contained within the planning program budget. Next, as part of our fiscal strategy to support building capital projects, is our annual debt service. This represents payments that we're making over time for projects and land acquisitions that were supported through one of our county partner-driven bonding programs. You might remember after a 74% decrease in debt service in 2024, following our final payment for the note for 325 Blake Road, debt service since then has remained essentially flat and will continue to do so right around $1.1 million unless we decide to use this tool to fund other projects that might be in queue. The next grouping here in terms of budget areas are operations and programs. These, of course, all work in alignment to support our capital project and policy initiatives. Across these programs, operations and programs, we're showing a net increase of 0.5%, around $37,000 in 2026. Operations itself, which includes our general operations, it includes information technology and planned facility improvements, is showing a 6.5% increase overall. We've talked about that, including things like contract inflation and our base legal, accounting, engineering contracts, replacement of interior furnishings, licensing costs for IT, deployment of some new systems, and then funds assigned for the campus improvements to our parking lot right outside. Project planning has just shy of a 6.5% increase, around $66,000, associated primarily with the initiation of the Painter Creek Jennings planning, which we talked about in the presentation. Policy planning this year has the largest increase of our programs, around 30%, $214,000. almost all of which is associated with the development of the 2027 watershed plan and detailed in the packet. Permitting sits around 2.5% or $21,000. That's based on 5-year averages that we run that look at the average engineering costs for a permit review. Project maintenance is close to flat due to some net changes of vegetation management and the removal of the second phase of our stormwater pond study. And then rounding things out, outreach sees a 1% decrease due to Samantha's ongoing quest to right-size programmatic activities to support all of our key initiatives, and then research and monitoring also with a decrease, just over 4% or $41,000. That's essentially due to reduction in new ResNet site, our real-time sensor network, since that's now fully built out, and some changes in the emphasis that we're putting on some watershed diagnostics. So with that, hopefully we've summarized both the broad environmental and community benefit that we propose to advance in 2026 and the expenditures and the revenue sources that are necessary to support them. Again, and to close on the levy front, there's no proposed increase in the district's tax levy next year. And the last thing that I'd say before the board receives any public comment is thank you. Both to the board for its guidance at a policy level on the budget, its careful planning over multiple years, the good questions that you ask that have driven continuous refinement both in our process and the outcomes for the budget, to the staff for assembling the budget and helping balance it, and to our CAC, who's not here tonight but always asks really deep, probing questions, as Treasurer Loftus can attest to help us guide and shape and refine the budget before it gets to you for the public hearing.
Were there public comments?
We've not received any public comments so far.
Okay. This is an opportunity for members of the public to address the board if they wish to concerning the budget and levy. I already did. All right, then we will close the public hearing. Thank you, Mr. Whisker.
Thank you.
Moving to item 11.1, Ms. Baker presenting Resolution 25045.
All right. Good evening, President White and Board of Managers. I'm before you this evening to recommend that the board authorize staff to execute a contract for the downtown Long Lake feasibility study. You'll recall that I was before the board in June to introduce the feasibility opportunity, and I'll give a quick recap of the background and how this opportunity came to be. Then I'll walk you through what we're trying to accomplish, the RFP process, and then the staff's recommendation for a consultant for this work. And then I'll end with the project timeline before I return it to President White for board consideration. So the feasibility is taking place in the Long Lake Creek Subwatershed, which is getting a lot of love tonight, as Kaylee is also presenting later this evening on County Road 6. In 2023, MCWD completed development of the Long Lake Creek Roadmap, which broke the watershed down into 5 management units. In each unit, we identified the water quality issues and the drivers causing those issues, as well as a range of strategies and project opportunities to meet water quality goals. The types of strategies can be generally sorted into 3 buckets: regional treatment, landscape projects, and internal load management. Regional stormwater treatment is recommended as the highest priority and the first step to cost-effectively treat large drainage areas in the sub-watershed. And then the dots on the map here show the regional treatment areas that we're targeting. County Road 6, which you know already, Deer Hill Pond, which is of similar age to County Road 6 and could be a future opportunity. And then the remaining 2 dots are in downtown Long Lake. So the downtown management unit, where this feasibility will be taking place, is 518 acres and has nearly 4 times the volume of nutrient loading per unit area compared to other management units. This is due to the large amount of impervious surfaces in the highly urbanized landscape. As James mentioned in his presentation in 2022, the district was awarded with $175,000 in Bowser grant funding to conduct a feasibility study at Holbrook Park, which is one of the RoadMap's identified sites for possible regional treatment. And unlike the other sites on the map a few slides ago, those dots, this is the only area where a regional treatment facility does not currently exist. So after conversations with city staff and a site visit, we learned that Holbrook may not actually be the greatest place for regional treatment, but as it's one of the highest elevations in the city. But there are other opportunities in the ravines around Holbrook that could still provide potential solutions. So given that we already had the Bowser grant money in hand, we decided to consider a much greater area beyond just Holbrook Park and include other sites that were identified in the roadmap and maybe also find areas that we hadn't considered yet. And as a small aside, before we talk about the feasibility scope, I wanted to mention that Long Lake's City Administrator, Scott Wesky, is leaving his role after being on staff for 11 years. He was a great partner of the watershed and really supportive of our work. Him leaving won't derail the feasibility plans, but just wanted to note that we're tracking these changes and we'll have to engage with the new city administrator once they're in place. So we broke out the downtown management unit into three kind of logical focus areas, which include all the roadmap identified projects and other promising areas that we identified through our site walk and discussions with city staff. The RFP laid out a suggested list of tasks, including project identification and evaluation using a comparative analysis framework, feasibility level concept designs for selected projects, a permitting scan, and an assessment of the level of operations and maintenance for potential projects. And then finally, a cost-benefit analysis for each project opportunity, including an analysis on ease of procuring funding. We released the RFP in mid-June, hosted an informational meeting June 26th, and then reviewed the proposals and conducted the interviews in July and part of August. 5 firms submitted proposals: Geosyntec, HDR, Houston Engineering, ISG, and Stanley. The staff team, consisting of Mike Heyman, Brian Beck, and myself, reviewed and evaluated the proposals using a weighted criteria with the firm's approach and methodology as the most important, followed by firm experience and area knowledge, and then by cost. And just to flag for you, unlike the recent construction bids for East Auburn and the County Road 6 construction bid that you'll hear tonight, this RFP is for professional services, which means that it's not a low responsive bid process. Instead, the board may consider a variety of factors, including the evaluation metrics highlighted, as it determines the best consultant to deliver this work. All firms were aware of the grant award, and all proposals came in well under the grant award of $175,000. We selected 2 firms for interviews, Houston Engineering and HDR. Both firms came to the office and gave a short presentation expanding on their proposal, including rationale for their approach and their budget, and we had a discourse on some of the project challenges. Based on its proposal and the interview process, staff is recommending HDR be awarded the design contract. HDR also included a partner subconsultant, landscape architecture firm Damon Farber. HDR's proposal stood out for a variety of reasons. First, HDR was the only firm whose project evaluation framework included not just quantitative water quality metrics, but also included things like ecological and community value. HDR's proposal heavily emphasized collaboration and vision. MCWD staff place a high value on being actively engaged in the process and collaborating closely to shape project alternatives and ideas. These qualities are central to how we work, and the firms that we tend to work with demonstrate strong understanding of that alignment with this approach. So HDR will bring us with every step of the way, from an on-site site visit, a day of precedent tours, and then a design charrette with HDR and Damon Farber as we determine the best options for this area. HDR will deliver this vision by producing a project implementation plan that will lay out sequencing, phasing, and funding strategies for all feasible project opportunities. Third, Damon Farber is a great addition to HDR's team. They have worked on many projects together that integrate water resources and landscape design, and they're really great at highlighting placemaking potential. They can already envision the ability to connect different community resources through a green urban corridor and make the Long Lake beachfront into more of a destination. This graphic, which didn't show up great, but it's pulled from HDR's proposal, and it exemplifies how the integration of project opportunities into a broader long-term vision for the community really reflects MCWD's philosophy of balanced urban ecology. Both staff and HDR saw this feasibility study as an opportunity for the city to both green its space and protect and improve its namesake that the city may not be able to accomplish on their own. HDR's was the only proposal that had this element and this desire to take it a step further than just technical viability of various water resources projects. And as you may have seen in the cost summary table provided under separate cover via email, HDR's cost was among the highest of the proposed budgets. However, they're proposing on average 180 hours of more work. So the cost per hour was in line with the others. These extra hours are going towards that placemaking and the evaluation of ecological and community co-benefits that really set it apart from the rest of the firms. Here is HDR's proposed schedule. Assuming contract approval this evening, project kickoff will commence in September, beginning with a site walk. HDR has also proposed conducting a half-day charrette with the project team during task 3. And then the goal is to be completed with the feasibility study 6 months from now. And before I turn it back over to President White, I want to note that the project manager from HDR, Ryan Fucci, is in the audience if you have any questions about the proposal that I haven't yet answered. So to conclude, staff recommends approving Resolution 25-045, authorizing staff to award HDR the downtown Long Lake feasibility.
Thank you, Ms. Baker. Is there a motion to adopt the resolution?
Move.
Manager Hijmati, second from Manager Sando. Questions? Manager Olson.
Related to the Long Lake area, have we done any communicating about this proposal to the Long Lake Association?
Yes, Manager Olson, we presented back in May to the Long Lake City Council, and there was a Lake Association person present, and she seemed really excited and supportive of it. We haven't given the presentation to the full association yet, but she indicated that she would kind of give the association kind of an update based on that city council.
Yeah, they are a very active group, and I think it would be a nice courtesy if we gave them an update and fill them in on our decision. So, thank you, if you can do that.
Anything else? Manager Hijmati?
Yeah, the design charrette, which obviously is going to be really critical in this process, it's going to involve us and HDR. Is the city going to be involved in there, or is the Long Lake Association going to be involved in that?
We haven't discussed the entire invite list yet, Manager Hijmati, but I think that's something that we'll have to consider who will be a part of it. We obviously want all of our partners' input. I think we'll certainly invite Long Lake City staff if we can, but it might be difficult with the city administrator leaving in September.
Oh, I see. Seems that their views need to be incorporated,
Yes.
you know. You can't leave them out of it.
Yeah, we will certainly try to have them there, but it will just depend on their staffing and availability.
You have a question?
Yeah, just a process question. Thank you for interviewing two firms and explaining HDR's differentiation. I'm curious if you had any characteristics of kind of the middle of the pack, where they, when you were screening them, you know, was it experience mostly that sifted into the interview pack, or was it, you know, just project approach? Was there a theme, or was it just purely, you know, that's your rating came out that way and you just happened to do the highest and the lowest?
Oh, in terms of like that we decided to interview both
Yeah.
HDR
Yeah.
and Houston.
Yeah.
You know, we thought Houston was a good candidate to kind of they similar to the rest of the firms that we didn't decide to interview. They really looked at it as 9 distinct projects that we laid out and wanted them to evaluate. And like I said, didn't really have any sort of like integrated vision of how they can kind of work together and, you know, sequence out this one and this one and this one. Houston, we were curious why it was only 80,000. And so that was just another reason why we wanted to kind of hear what they had to say. They were kind of representative of the rest of the firms.
They were, okay. I was curious.
Anything else?
A question I wonder if I could talk to you, and if you want to come up here. Yeah, I wondered, as the project manager, whether you had any thoughts about the vision that, you know, that you could share with the board for this feasibility study.
Yeah, I think that something that we really realized as we were digging into the projects was just how connected water is throughout the community, and how connected I think some existing planning studies that are being done, I think, by the city for connecting people really align with the way that water is connected. And so we were really thinking about it in a way that we can hopefully bring everything together and deliver something that's holistic and is able to bring a lot of value beyond water quality.
Okay. What's your experience in this field?
In water resource engineering field?
Yeah, I mean, doing this kind of project, because as the project manager, you're going to have a pretty big influence. I wondered what your experience is.
Yeah, so I've been in the field of water resource engineering for ever so close to 15 years. And a lot of my experience has been in highly constrained urban corridors. So I started my career in Philadelphia and did a lot of work there with their green infrastructure program, and have been working here in Minnesota for the last 3 years.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Anything else? I didn't call for a motion yet, have I? No, is there a motion to adopt the resolution?
So moved.
Michael, what?
President White, I believe Manager Hejmati motioned.
Oh,
Thank you.
Hang on one second.
Thank you, I lost
Yeah,
track there.
thing.
Okay. Anything else before we vote then? All right, Manager Hejmati.
Aye.
Maxwell.
Aye.
White, aye. Olson.
Aye.
Loftus.
aye.
Sando. Miller.
Aye.
All right,
That's it.
it is adopted. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming.
Nice job.
We'll move now to 11.2, which is around County Road 6, with Ms. Cermak presenting 2 resolutions. We have time.
Okay, here we go. Good evening, President White, Board of Managers. I'm here tonight with two resolutions for you to consider regarding the County Road 6 pond retrofit. The first being a construction contract award, and the second being a design contract amendment for construction support services. Rachel already gave a nice background on the roadmap, so I can probably breeze through that even faster. And get us to the bid process that we ran, the results, walk you through the construction scope of work that is in your packet, and then we'll close with recommendations. So again, part of our broader regional strategy in the subwatershed, and supporting County Road 6 kind of rise to the top for priority was our effectiveness monitoring that we had kind of running in parallel to the roadmaps creation, really pointing to there being an opportunity there to kind of expand its performance capabilities. So we entered into feasibility, which pointed us to an earthen berm, so really strengthening this system as a dual cell system, and then adding in a gravity-fed sand filter bench to the south cell. So both those concepts were carried all the way through to design, which the board approved in May. But there was also a suite of other modifications that were included in our final design, some of which, like the weir modifications, are really tied to just the filter bench being able to function. So this helps us push water over the filter and getting access to that. We also added on a proactive pond dredging of the pond, all focused in that north cell, to really take advantage of some of the cost savings by stacking it on while we have the pond dewatered and equipment on site. And then lastly, we were able to explore an opportunity to restore the northwest corner that had been previously, at the time of construction, kind of cut off from the site hydrologically. So excited to bring that restoration forward. To support that restoration, the board will recall it authorized us entering into a landowner agreement. And that really secured our rights to be able to do the work in the northwest corner. So the actual land alteration itself, and then being able to kind of push and permanently place more water on the neighboring property. In return for those project benefits, we are providing the landowner a walking trail that you can kind of see comes from their backyard down to the pond so they can enjoy the restored area. So following finalized design and approval of that agreement, that kind of gives us and Stantec the green light to finalize the bid package and get that ready for bid. This is also the time where we execute the agreement and chase down any outstanding permits that we need. We want to make sure we have all those items in hand before we're in front of you tonight to award construction contract. So happy to report we have the agreement signed and we have our own permits, DNR permits, and Army Corps permits in hand. So bid period began on July 15th, and shortly after that, we hosted an on-site pre-bid meeting. Unique to this project is that we made the pre-bid meeting mandatory. For a few reasons, this project site is all located on private property, and so we didn't want to rely on or encourage contractors to be viewing the site on their own. So kind of scheduling that in one visit was beneficial. And then we also wanted to make sure, there's enough complexities with this project that they were really read into the site details and kind of the space that they have to work with, because it is somewhat confined with the easement boundary there. So then a bid opening was on August 7th, a few weeks after. We had 5 bidders at our mandatory pre-bid meeting, interested bidders, and ended up with 4 bids on opening day. You can see here this spread, there's about 150,000 gap or difference between our low bid and the high. This bid was structured as one single bid, so no alternates within this one. And you can see that bids came in favorable when compared to our engineer's cost estimate. And we had mentioned this during East Auburn's, but we had heard that we really were putting these out to bid at the right time. Contractors, this was really the first amount of winter work that they were bidding on. And so I think contractors are hungry to get winter work lined up and ensure they can keep their teams busy and on the roster. So I'm really excited about how the numbers shook out. Minger being the low bid, the board might recall we've worked with them in the past on the Powell diversion structure and the associated stormwater pipe that will, eventually divert the water to 325 Blake Road. So staff and Stantec have both found Minger to be the responsible and responsive bidder. So assuming contract to Minger this evening, we also need to amend our design contract to include the construction support services that we need for going through construction. Mike had mentioned at last meeting about how this kind of era of projects, we have not included this at the time of design. That is something we will be shifting in the next kind of era of projects and starting to contract for this on the onset of design. But I think nevertheless, when we get to this stage of a project, we likely will see potential amendments to this portion of the scope, just given that projects really tend to evolve during the design process. This one's a good example where from the onset of design, we've added in pond dredging and the work in the northwest corner. And so what that essentially does is we went from a 4 to 6 week construction window to an 8-week estimated. And so there's just more time that we need someone on site, observing, documenting, and a little more administrative support. So the scope in your packet has a not to exceed budget of just over $49,000. Really typical scope and similar to the type of work that you saw in the East Auburn construction support. Supporting us on the early side as we contract and have our pre-construction meeting, doing some of the field prep work, so getting the site and the easement and the boundaries staked. And then a bulk of the cost really is the site observation and the documentation. And then as the project comes to a close, they support the as-built records. So we have that for PMLM to reference. And then along the way, any administrative support with pay requests, change orders, and submittals. So should the board award contract tonight, this is kind of the typical or general schedule we plan to follow. So we would get into contracting following the issue of notice of award, which would bring us to a notice to proceed once we've gotten all the contract documents, the bid documents that or bid bonds that we need. Following notice to proceed, our next kind of big milestone is having that pre-construction meeting where we bring all the parties together, talk through the detailed construction schedule, talk through any of the permits that the contractor is required to obtain. And then we get to work. We're hoping that we have frozen conditions this year for both projects' sake. And there's a chance that this project, they might want to start some work earlier into the year, November, December, but a bulk of it will happen in those frozen conditions, likely January, February, with substantial completion mid-March and followed by final completion this summer, or coming summer. So with that, I have two distinct resolutions in front of you, the first being a contract award to Minger, and the second being a contract amendment for construction support.
Thank you, Ms. Cermak. Is there a motion to adopt Resolution 25046?
So moved.
Manager Hitchmadi, do I have a second?
Second.
Manager Olson seconds. Any questions for Ms. Cermak?
One quick one. The path down to that they're going to maintain, is that a certain width? Is it going to be crushed rock, or is it just the dirt? Or then how do we, they're going to maintain it, but is there any liability for us in case it washes away, or?
Yeah, great question, Manager Maxwell. So the trail is going to be about 4 feet wide. It'll be kind of field fit based off contours when we're out there with the contractor and with the homeowner. We're going to be kind of scraping it about 3 to 4 inches deep, and then setting that with crushed St. Cloud granite. And the liability of what happens to it and washouts will be on the homeowner. We walked through some of those risks as we were kind of going through design considerations. So they'll be taking on kind of full maintenance
And
responsibilities.
do they sign off on that then? They have to sign some?
We
okay.
do have that included within our agreement on kind of roles and responsibilities and maintenance requirements. Yep.
Thank you.
Manager Olson?
Normally, I'm used to seeing a contingency 10% on these projects, and I don't see either one of them.
It's on there.
Manager Olson, yeah, we do have the contingency for the construction contract written into the resolution where we can, staff or administrator can approve up to, I think, 10% of change orders, if that's what you're referencing.
Yeah, as well as Stantec?
That is a great question. I have to double check how I've worded that resolution. That one might
I think that's what I was looking
not
at
have
when I-
it.
Yeah.
But that is a common thing that we do typically include in a lot of kind of bigger contracts.
Mhm.
But for that one, I think we felt confident that we had
Fair enough.
what we needed in there.
And there's nothing wrong with not to exceeds for consultants.
Anything else before we vote? All right, then voting on 25046, Manager Hejmati,
Aye.
Manager Maxwell.
Aye.
White votes aye, Manager Olson.
Aye.
Loftus.
Aye.
Sando.
Aye.
Manager Miller.
Aye.
Thank you. That motion is adopted. Now moving to 25047. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Manager Maxwell moves. Is there a second?
Second.
Manager Hejmati seconds. Any questions or further discussion on this resolution? Then voting, Manager Hejmati,
Aye.
Maxwell,
Aye.
White, aye, Olson,
Aye.
Loftus,
Aye.
Sando,
Aye.
Miller.
Aye.
The motion is adopted. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Item 13 on our agenda is an opportunity for board to bring forth issues, inquiries, or ideas that they wish to have explored. Is there anything to submit this evening?
Yes, I have something.
Manager Miller?
I want to ask am I recognized?
Yes.
Yes, you may.
I want to ask the council if in our budget approval, under the capital finance, we've got a sum of money there. If subsequently we decide to use a portion of this for legal fees regarding 325, there's no problem with appropriating money out of that account, is there?
Manager Miller, I'm sorry, could you repeat the question? And may I also ask you to turn your camera on?
I don't know how to do it. Here, how is
Maybe while you work on that, yeah.
the well, it doesn't look like I can get it on.
I think Manager Miller's question was during the approval or during the public hearing of the budget, is there anything that you would see that would preclude us in the future from allocating funding that's in our capital finance fund to support any litigation needs that we have moving forward?
Madam President, Manager Miller, the adoption of a budget doesn't confine you to, it sets the budget in terms of the total cap. It sets your levy in terms of a total. You have flexibility within interfund transfers during the course of the year as you determine is appropriate. That would include addressing additional costs from other projects.
Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Okay, thank you.
Would League of Minnesota Cities insurance cover that anyway?
Madam President, Manager Maxwell, concerning litigation in which we are insured and the league has determined coverage and defense, yes.
Okay.
But typically that doesn't cover all costs.
Okay.
Thank you. Is there anything else? Then we'll go to number 14, which is the administrator's report. Mr. Wisker.
Thank you, President White. Managers, I think the board at this point is fairly familiar with the concerns that have been raised regarding 60 Crabapple Lane. It's been raised by the Loomis family that's in attendance this evening. So I wanted to touch on that briefly. You've, I think to date, seen communications. You've seen, can you hear me? You've seen communications from the Loomises. You've seen the responses that we've sent that have been drafted in coordination with legal, with engineering.
Excuse me, can you get closer to your mic there?
I don't know how to get any closer without swallowing it. Is that better? I mean, do I need 3 microphones? Maybe I should start rapping.
Can you hear him? Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
So what I was saying is I think you're quite familiar at this point with the concerns that the Loomis family has raised regarding 60 Crabapple Lane. You've seen communications that the Loomises have sent us and addressed to President White. You've seen the responses that we've sent back that have been drafted in coordination with legal, with engineering, after a very small briefing that I provided you in December and January, or between December and January. Since then, I think at least on a couple of occasions, you've heard from the Loomises directly, yourself, here at the board meeting on a few occasions. And at the last meeting, I committed that following that meeting, I would attend a site visit with the Loomises, which we've done. And I think that was on August 18th. Following our site visit, which a couple of staff attended with me, we enjoyed a long follow-up call on August 21st. And I just wanted to relay to the board how I understood those conversations to unfold and where I thought we landed. Through the conversations, what I've really focused on is trying to listen, deeply to the Loomises' concern. I appreciate how deeply they're invested and engaged in this issue. And I've really focused on asking them, what do they want in order to feel some sort of sense of resolution, knowing that in January we communicated following the board briefing that, and since then, that the berm that they were initially concerned with has been removed, that any fill that they have been concerned with that lies under their neighboring property sod likely falls under an exception in our rule, which provides for ordinary landscaping. And that we've also communicated in writing if the soil placed under the sod did exceed ordinary landscaping, there's nothing at this point to suggest it would have been so substantial as to create water displacement on their property or to lake scale. And it's for those reasons, the exception and those other reasons that I gave you, that we determined and communicated in writing back in January, this didn't, from our perspective, warrant further investigation or escalatory enforcement, which the board concurred with. So building off of that, ask the Loomises on site, what are you really looking for and what do you want? And where I thought we landed was we had communicated what I just communicated with you, that we're not pursuing enforcement as an organization. Loomis has reinforced several times for me they don't want the watershed district to pursue enforcement against their current owners, against the current neighboring property owners. I really listened to their concerns, and I said I would carry their message. They'd probably communicate it differently, maybe better, I don't know, but I think the board's aware they're deeply dissatisfied with, based on what I think they perceive as gaps in the district's regulatory policy, perhaps, the application or their perception of misapplication of our discretion and enforcement. And what they've communicated to me, at least, is an inattention to detail and lack of rigor in field data collection, and perhaps along the way, my communications, I'm kind of picking that up between the lines. Through that conversation, in response to the concerns, the Loomises did say they would like to see us consider a change in policy. I'm willing, if the board supports it, to work with staff and legal counsel to consider the development of a companion guidance that to our floodplain rule, that the board might then consider in the future that could potentially add specificity to that exception provision, which right now speaks broadly about ordinary landscaping. I think there's considerations there about how specific we want to get, because that could be a double-edged sword, but I'm happy to look further into that. And that's really where we left things, so I wanted to give you that report.
All right, thank you.
Do I still need both mics? I'm going to finish with water levels. Things are as they should be.
Can I have a comment?
Yes.
Thank you. It seems to me that in this day and age on environmental regulations, we've got to be extremely careful about extending our current regulations to whims and wants. Because I don't think anybody could give an impact statement on changing any of our rules or regulations to address the issues that you just pointed out. And I really want to caution us about spending any time or money on such a on such a endeavor, because I think there would be great resistance to it by the general public.
Thank you, Manager Miller. Mr. Whisker?
Yeah, thank you. So, thank you, Manager Miller. On water levels, I was just going to say things are hopefully as they should be as we approach what I think is almost fall. Lake Minnetonka has receded from a pretty high elevation earlier this summer and not too long ago, on August 19th of 929.6. It's sitting just under ordinary high right now at 929.38. Over that period, we've ramped down dam discharge to 100 cubic feet per second, which is where things sit right now. And as a result, we've seen creek flows moderate further downstream from well over 400 cubic feet per second after some of those big heavy rains a week and a half ago, now down to about 175 cubic feet per second. So we're beginning to enter that drawdown phase and approach, God forbid, winterization of the dam later this year.
Thank you. At this point, we'll go back up and pick up item 12, which I anticipate going into closed session.
Madam President,
Mr. Smith?
we would recommend that the board go into closed session for the purpose of receiving confidential legal advice concerning litigation strategy in the matter of Alatus versus Minnehaha Creek Watershed District and City of Hopkins.
Thank you. Is there a motion to go into closed session?
I'll move.
Manager Maxwell moves.
Second.
Is there a second? Manager Hejmati. Before I call for a vote, I'll allow a few minutes for others who aren't part of this discussion to go on.
Are we allowed to move closed session? Does it have to be in that order? Do we have to
Oh, it's
know
just
what
for
I mean?
convenience because.
No, I know, but I mean permanently, so we don't have
Oh.
to switch it every time.
Oh, think about that.
You know what I mean? Because every time you have to amend the agenda.
But we have a standard, like 12 is always discussion items and
Yeah.
15. you know,
Is that like detailed somewhere that it has?
It's always been that way. It's been that way for decades, I mean, for years. I shouldn't say decades, years. But I'll think about that. Maybe, yeah, I'll think about that.
Sherry, I'm not going to participate in the closed session.
Okay.
You know, I've been briefed and I know what's proposed, so if I can be relieved of that duty, I'm leaving.
Absolutely. Thanks for attending it all.
Mr. Loomis?
Yeah,
Mr.
thank you.
Loomis?
Okay.
He dropped a file there. Thank you.
All right, voting on going into closed session, Manager Hejmati.
Aye.
Maxwell.
Aye.
White says aye. Olson.
Aye.
Loftus.
Aye.
Sando.
Aye.
And that is all of us, so we are now in closed session. Meeting's adjourned.
Meeting's adjourned.